Hey everyone, how are you all doing? It's your 23rd favourite internet Geordie, Liam from Pushtware here. Recently we ran a poll over on our website where we asked our readers which version of the PlayStation 5 do you plan to buy? The results were, well, fairly expected. Out of the 15,000 people who voted, 62% said that they would be buying the standard PlayStation 5 no matter what, but interestingly 19% of the people who responded said that they planned to pick up the PlayStation 5's Digital Edition. So we've decided to pull together this little video where we discuss the best reasons for buying a Digital Edition or a Standard Edition of the upcoming PlayStation 5. Before we start, if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, it would really help us out. So let's start things off talking about reasons to buy the digital edition of the PlayStation 5. I'm sure a lot of people watching, hardcore gamers, aren't really interested in buying a digital edition of a console, so it is really interesting, I think, the reasons for buying it. The main reason, and I was quite surprised by this, is most people who are planning to buy a PlayStation 5 digital edition don't care at all about physical media, and in fact, they find it to be a pain, and as a result, only buy their games digitally. In fact, a few people in the comment section mentioned that they'd never used the disc tray on their PlayStation 4 for as long as they'd owned the console, which feels very strange to me. A few people said that they would never buy a game at launch and rely exclusively on PlayStation Store sales. We've seen some fantastic discounts over the past few years on the PlayStation Store, so it makes sense that a lot of these people who are planning on staying digital for the next generation are literally just planning to wait for all of these brand new PlayStation 5 exclusives to drop significantly in price as time goes on. The convenience of buying digitally is understandably a great reason to buy a digital-only system. Physical media, for a lot of people, feels quite old-fashioned. You have these little boxes that take up space in your house, you have to swap discs if you want to change games, and with most games being so large in size, a lot of the data isn't even on the disc anyway, and these games have to be transferred over to your hard drives regardless of whether or not you play it digitally or have a physical copy. So this makes a lot of sense for people who don't really care about the faff and maybe only want to buy games a few years down the line and maybe don't want to play many games as they move forward into the next generation. Maybe people who are slightly older or don't have as much time as they used to. If you're after convenience and you have no interest in buying physical, why would you buy a console that even supports that format? Another reason, which is purely speculative at this time, seeing as though Sony haven't revealed a huge amount about the digital edition, is that the console is rumoured to be slightly cheaper than the standard edition. A slightly cheaper console means that it may offset other costs, such as buying additional games at launch. Let's say the console is £50 to £100 or dollars cheaper than the standard edition. That money could go towards buying another controller or another game or something to just enhance your day one experience. Now, we can't confirm whether or not the digital edition will be cheaper, but I mean, you're removing a very core component of the system. You are going to knock the price down a bit to make it more appealing, right? I mean, that's just good business. A few other people, and I'm aware this comes from a privileged financial position, want to buy a digital edition as their second console a few years down the line for a separate room in their house. A few people mentioned they would like to have the console in a room that isn't their sitting room, maybe a bedroom, probably not the bathroom. I don't know why I gave the option of different rooms, definitely just the bedroom. The reasoning behind having the digital edition in a separate room is just purely because it would be a lesser version of the console in their eyes. They just want to have this box that they can stream media from, potentially play certain digital games, you know, things that they would play to relax, maybe not have huge gaming sessions. I know that when I upgraded to my PlayStation 4 Pro, we did take the PlayStation 4 into the bedroom to use it as basically a YouTube and Netflix machine. I don't think we've played a single game on it, but you know, people might want to do that, that's fine. But I think a lot of people will buy it for this. I think a lot of people will buy a digital edition as a slightly cheaper secondary console that sits in a different part of the house. And then some people, and we thought this was a really interesting reason, would only buy a digital edition if it was the only version available at launch because the standard edition has sold out because of supply issues. I do understand this. I think Sony are going to try their best to meet supply and demand for the PlayStation 5, but with every single console launch, it's very, very hard for a distributor to meet demand, and every launch is always met with supply issues, unless you're the Wii U or the Xbox One. That's probably an unnecessary dump on Microsoft, but a perfectly necessary dump on Nintendo, especially when you're one of the idiots who bought a Wii U on launch day. Why did I do that? I have no idea if the PlayStation 5 will suffer any kind of shortages when it launches, but it's fair to assume that it might be a little difficult to get if you haven't pre-ordered or made arrangements to buy it around the launch window, and it's a fair thing to assume that the digital edition will be in less demand than the standard edition, therefore making it a more viable purchase if the standard edition has sold out. And I think a lot of these people as well kind of said that they would buy the digital edition as a temporary console, and then they would buy a standard edition further down the line. On the other hand, we have reasons to buy the standard edition over the digital edition. The main reason is that, especially here in the UK, games are much cheaper physically than digitally, especially when new. And with the price of games seemingly increasing next generation, this may become an even more important reason for people to buy the standard edition. Just to make a quick comparison right now, here in the UK, I can buy Ghost of Tsushima on the PlayStation Store, just the standard edition, for $54.99, or I can buy exactly the same version physically for $48.85. That's like the £6 difference. Why wouldn't I do that? Over time, that adds up, and you can kind of assume that the presumably higher cost of the standard edition will pay for itself very quickly if you're only buying physical copies of brand new titles. The great reason to buy the standard edition is then you have the option of purchasing both digital and physical titles. You have that choice, which is going to be very important to people. That means that you can take advantage of sales in brick and mortar shops and digital discounts. Speaking of high street stores, if you remember what they were like, trading in games you've had enough of and swapping them for second-hand titles is still a very viable marketplace. When I was about 10 years old or a teenager, or even when I was at university, my only viable method of playing games was to trade in old ones and pick up second-hand ones. And I don't think that's changed. I think a lot of people who maybe can't afford to buy brand new games really rely on the second-hand market, so a lot of people will want to buy a console with a disc tray to make sure that they can continue to do this. And as much as you could complain about the second-hand market, I do think it does a lot of good for a lot of different reasons. Not only does it allow people to experience games that might not be able to afford them brand new, I think it also allows people to find experiences that they would have normally overlooked. When Blockbuster shut down, I used to live very close to one at university, and I picked up so many PlayStation 3 titles for dirt cheap that were all second-hand and were in a terrible state, but I played so many titles like Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, DMC, these titles that I never would have had a chance to play if I hadn't had the opportunity to buy them for literally 50p. So I think that's a great reason to stick with a console that can play physical titles. Another obvious one here, but people are finally excited to be able to play 4K Blu-rays on their PlayStation. This was a controversial omission from the PlayStation 4 Pro, so I think a lot of people who are really into watching their Blu-rays are just excited to be able to watch them on the PlayStation, which I think makes a lot of sense. Another reason, and this is probably my main one as well, if I'm being honest, collectors just like to have physical copies. It's nice sometimes, I think, to have something physical that you can put on a shelf or have a little look at and hold it in your hands when it comes to brand new titles. When all of this global madness started, I bought Resident Evil 3 and Persona 5 Royal digitally, which is the first time I've bought huge games like that digitally and didn't buy them physically. And there's a really bad, rotten part of my brain that is waiting for Resident Evil 3 to drop in price for the physical copy, so I can buy it then, just so I have all of the Resident Evil titles on PlayStation 4 botched. So I think for a lot of people who like to have physical copies, buying a digital edition isn't even something they'll consider at this point. A really important reason is that if you want to upgrade your games from the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5, like FIFA, Cyberpunk 2077, the Avengers title, and you buy physical PlayStation 4 games at the moment, you won't be able to upgrade them if you then buy a digital edition. In fact, this point extends to PlayStation 4 games and backwards compatibility in general. If you have a physical collection of PlayStation 4 titles, you're kind of missing out if you buy a digital edition of the PlayStation 5. You won't be able to take advantage of the next gen upgrades, and you won't even be able to play them on the console in general. general, unless you have them digitally, of course, it's all about convenience. And if you have a large physical collection of PlayStation 4 games, it makes sense to buy a physical edition of the PlayStation 5 so that you can play those titles with all of their next-gen benefits. So going back to that poll on the website, alongside people who said they would buy a standard edition and those who said they'd buy a digital edition, 13% of people responded saying that it all depended on price and availability, which I think we have touched on a little bit, but is a very important point, and 6% said they're not planning to buy a PlayStation 5 anytime soon. Some reasons to hold out for a little while include waiting for special edition consoles. Maybe you don't like the standard white, black and blue version of the system and are waiting for a black version or one that's a completely different colour. That's fair enough. Some people spoke about the inevitable slim edition that will no doubt come out in 3 to 4 years time. This is a good reason to hold off. I mean, the slim model will be cheaper. It will have all of the launch day issues that come part and parcel with brand new consoles ironed out, so you won't have to worry about it breaking. And by that point as well, it's fair to say that you'll probably get a few games bundled with it, and most of the big hitters from the first few years of the console's lifecycle will be considerably cheaper. And the final reason to hold out is people just want to wait and see what Sony's plans are regarding digital services. They want to see what PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now will look like when it comes to the next generation. Maybe 3 or 4 years down the line, it would make more sense to buy a digital edition to take advantage of whatever those services look like in a few years' time. Maybe Sony will have their own version of Xbox Game Pass, and maybe people are just holding out to see what their plans are regarding that. So there we have it. That's some reasons to buy the digital edition of the PlayStation 5, some reasons to buy the standard edition, and some reasons to maybe hold off for a few years just to see what happens. Which version of the PlayStation 5 are you planning to buy, and what are your reasons for doing so? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have any suggestions for videos of this style in the future, maybe you'd like us to talk about PlayStation Plus on the PlayStation 5, let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and make sure to subscribe to Push Square for everything PlayStation. Thank you, as always, for watching.